We'll never be moved from here. Our lives will live in the seeds we've sown.
Welcome to the Art of Relating podcast, where I'm figuring out life, asking questions, becoming present with the unknown, and navigating the mystery with my dear friends. These conversations are one of my greatest resources, and I hope they can be a catalyst for you on your journey as well. I'm your host, Tammy Chow from Somatic Spirit.
All of this planted deep for the ones to come.
So excited to be in this conversation with you.
Yeah. So I'm so excited that we're actually intentionally talking about this because I know you've mentioned sacred celibacy several times and I've seen your new account and everything. And but every time we've been together, we've just been, doing all the things and, visiting Mary Magdalene's cave, and we just love to gab about like everything else, like life and men and sex and feelings. And I've never got to be able to be like, tell me about your sacred celibacy course and everything that has led you to this point. And I think it'll be so interesting because my whole journey this year has been reclaiming my sacred sexuality and kind of marrying the slut and the nun within me. And I think it's just interesting because that's how I even know you, right? Like I found you on Sunroom, which is our friend Lucy's platform that allows women to monetize their content, but also allow things like nudity, which isn't allowed on Instagram. Yeah, that was during the time that I was really starting to work on like body stuff and like sexual trauma and starting to be more comfortable with my body and putting myself out in that way. And so just like receiving your transmission through like the way that you embody yourself, the way that you express, and the way that you just like love yourself as your own muse. Like you were one of the main, like in the book, The Wild Woman's Way by Michaela Boehm, she talks about how women learn through resonance. And so it's like when you don't know how to embody a certain thing, like look to different women and just kind of like be them, like so that you could feel it in your body. And so
I
you were
love that.
biggest expanders. And so what I do know about your work and your path, and obviously you're like an amazing fucking just I can't even describe your photography and the ways that you were able to capture me recently in France and Kate and everyone that you hold ceremony and capture. But also what I do know about you more is like the dark femme and the sexuality and the, just being so unapologetic about embodying that. And so then when I saw sacred celibacy, I was like, ooh, I'm so curious, because I think to a lot of people, they might assume the opposite, right? When we're openly embodying our sexuality, they assume maybe like, oh, let's group it in with like the free love, like let's have sex and, everybody's
be
in love.
polyamorous.
Exactly. So I just love that we get to like dissect the paradox of this today.
I love that. Yeah, it's so interesting just hearing, I guess, that people's experiences or projections or experiences of me. And yeah, I always say in every podcast that I get interviewed for various different things that I really do believe that like there is such a huge range that we as women carry. And the more that we get to embody more of ourselves, the light and the dark, the masculine and the feminine, the less likely we are to actually be boxed in or to be put into a specific particular type of thing. And I really love that about me. I am literally like a walking paradox and I'm just such a contradiction. And
Yeah.
just love that. Yeah, I always say, like, I can't be labeled, I can't be put into a box because I'm literally all of it.
Yeah. Yes, I love it so much. I love it when you say that. I love that about me, and it's so genuine when you say it. It's so
Yeah.
sweet. Um, so right, like I don't even know where to start. I guess I'm curious, like, yeah, tell me what is sacred celibacy, I guess, and we can start from there.
Yeah, so for me, I guess I'll start a little bit about like my journey and I guess, yeah, the sacred celibacy that I've coined, this particular deep journey into self. I have feel like I did lose my virginity quite young at 14.
Me too.
And yeah, I remember you mentioning that. And for me, it was like in the park to this man that kept on pursuing me. And for those of you who don't know, like I've had a lot of rites of passages as a young woman through my mom, and I've actually had a lot of beautiful ceremonies that would tend to this sacredness that we as women are, and our blood and our period and our moon time. So I feel like I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of worth and sacredness taught to me. However, being in a new country, I moved to London when I was 12 and I just so badly wanted to fit in and I just wanted to be liked by the guys that were popular, and there was this deep desire and a yearning to belong.
Hmm.
So I feel like part of me did kind of start my like having sex. I did discover my own self pleasure and my own orgasms really young. I remember just being so young and discovering my clit and discovering pleasure and just asking all the boys in the village to like show me theirs and I'll show you mine. And then I never got to show mine.
Wait, what do
I,
you mean? You never got to
oh,
show yours?
well, they would show me theirs, but then I would just like run off and not show them mine.
Oh my gosh. Just kidding.
So
Psych.
just kidding. Yeah. Just like, yeah, but I also just remember memories of me standing in the shed with this guy that I liked. Maybe I was like maybe 5 and he literally used to put his like little penis in between my lips and we would just like stand there in silence in this shed and we would just feel so naughty doing what we were doing.
Yeah.
But it's like we weren't really exposed to porn or anything, so I didn't know, like it was like instinctually we kind of knew that that was a thing to do, but there was no penetration. It was just like this innocent kind of sharing of this moment that just felt like so naughty but innocent. So anyway, I lost my virginity when I was 14 to this guy that wasn't my boyfriend, but he was pursuing me quite heavily. And yeah, I guess a lot of my teens were spent being in the arms of men that didn't truly love me or had a lot of reverence for me. I grew up in London and I just felt always had this gene of monogamy in me. And I just always wanted to be like a wife and just to have like a really beautiful monogamous relationship. But throughout my 20s, maybe because of, my trauma or whatever that may be, I just kind of attracted the wrong guys. And then into my 20s, I did have some beautiful relationships when I was quite young. I had a 2.5 year relationship. But either way, I feel like my sexuality really was always online. I was always felt like I was innocently always quite in my body and in my like feminine energy. I've always had this sort of magnetism around me. But yeah, so basically fast forward to my 30s and it was COVID and I was in this beautiful relationship, a conscious relationship with this beautiful man that I loved very much. And we had a very open relationship. Like we were monogamous. We were together and we weren't sleeping with anybody else. However, he had a lot of freedom to, I guess, hang out with other women and get to know and explore like the connections that he kind of has with other women, but not in a sexual way. So anyway, yeah, COVID happened and a lot of my life like completely got redirected, as many of us have when COVID hit. And there was just this real deep voice in my womb that just said, like, enough. I just need time off. I need to heal these deeper layers of my own self because I keep attracting these men that just don't hold the reverence for me the way that I do for sex. Sex to me, it is a spiritual practice. And although I had my hoe phases when I was maybe younger in London, but I've always kind of been very discerning with who I sleep with. Up until I was 30, I never had a one night stand. I was not into getting like I just was a very particular with who I sleep with. And I've always feel like throughout my whole life, I've always had really good sex. But however, it just didn't feel as deep and as soulful. So my sex life has been full with maybe a little bit of junk food sex that feels passionate and hot and yummy, but there is no real connection there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would be more of like good sex that feels good, and it's like there is a level of it that just feels connected and beautiful. But then there is also like the tantric and more kind of we just get to merge, and yeah, it just feels really different. I love nourishing sex that feels really yummy to my system. And I did have that with my ex. And so yeah, when I broke up with him due to various reasons, my womb just said, I need time off. I need to clear completely all of the men that I've slept with. And I listened and I wanted to heal. And that's how my own 2.5 year celibacy journey started.
Beautiful. And even before we go into that and like all of the waves that you move through, I'm curious, like just for anybody listening, like when you say my womb was like, hey, it's time for a break, like, when I work with women, our connection to our pelvis and our womb usually like not existent, just from the ways
Yes.
that many of us in a Western culture are raised, and and many Eastern or everywhere to be ashamed, and so yeah, I'm curious when you say it spoke or it told you that, are there sensations or can you describe that inner knowing, what it feels like?
Yes, absolutely. So for me, it really does feel like, because I do have a connection with my womb these days, more so than when I did when I was maybe younger. But there is just this knowing that my whole, maybe just, when like there is like a gut feeling, there is like a whole body feeling that maybe others would be able to relate to. However, for when my womb speaks, it's very clear, and you could say that it's like instinct or an intuition or something within me. It's like my whole body is like, no, like that's enough, and I need time. And for now, like, for people to connect to the women's, of course, there is so many things which I teach within the Sacred Celibacy course as well. But there is like tingling. You do get to have practices where you do connect to the womb, to the voice of your womb. And that this, like, it is a more of a distinctual voice that comes from the womb, and the way that she talks to you is very individual. It's very personal. So I'm not to say that that's how the wombs, all universal wombs speak, but there is a resonance that it carries.
Totally. Yeah, when I first was asked, like to listen to my pussy, it was like the first time I heard this deep cavernous voice that's like, no. Like, what the fuck?
Yes. 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 I also like when I connect more to my pussy, her language is more like, I want this. I want that. It's like there is like a more of a want and like a desire, Whereas I feel like when the heart speaks, it's softer, it's more kind of very more of a whisper. Whereas sometimes if it's like the womb and the pussy, it's like more strong. And it's like,
Yeah,
whoa, okay.
totally.
Gotta
There's no
listen.
denying it. And you're like, yes, ma'am.
No. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It feels very strong and like, okay, cool. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I really do encourage every woman to take that journey into the pussy and into the womb to actually be connected to that voice and know when the pussy speaks and she's telling you that this man that or a woman or even the way that you self-pleasuring yourself is not really doing it. There is something that's happening within your own yoni, whether that's UTIs or anything like that. It's like you've got to listen because even in that's a language of the womb that she's trying to communicate with you. Whether you have really heavy periods and you have a lot of pain when you bleed, if there is like UTIs that you're experiencing when you're self pleasuring or when you're with a sexual partner, this is all the voices of your own body that are trying to communicate something to you.
Yeah. Wow. It's of course it's just such a, what do you call it? Coincidence or not coincidence, but like right now, as you know, me and Marsha just went on like an odyssey going from
Mm-hmm.
Mary Magdalene's cave to Saint Marie de la Mer, where the three Marys converged after Jesus died. And it was just the spiritual odyssey that we went through. So I'm
Oh,
kind of
so
referencing.
beautiful.
Yes. And so we spent a good amount of time together. And during that time, like since my dog Nala died in January, I've had all kinds of health issues come up. And I kind of like have figured out it's like the candida again, but these were all huge things in my past, like candida, UTI.
Mm,
And, there was like a little bit of feeling like, oh my God, I'm past this, like, why is this coming back right now? And yeah, I guess I'm just curious to get your take on it because, like this past week, actually, I started again having UTI symptoms and I haven't since like my mid 20s. And, I
mm,
know it has to do with like the candida and like the grief and everything I've been moving through, but it just like sparked my interest because you said like that's the womb and the pussy speaking. And I'm
yes.
like, but why? Because I'm in like the healthiest, most secure relationship, where I feel like my
Mm,
sexuality and spirituality are held together through this like kind of divine love and connection. And so it feels disheartening or like there's some disparity, with what's going on in my, yeah,
yes. Oh,
emotional world versus physical.
yeah, it's such it is very disheartening. I feel like when we are connecting with somebody new and it feels very stable and very secure and very beautiful, and then all this stuff starts to arise. For me, I guess I can only speak for myself in the past when I have felt that I would be connecting with a man and then there would UTIs. If it's from the beginning, sometimes it's just something, it could be more on a spiritual level, but then also it could just be like his bacteria and your bacteria are not really mixing. It could be like a hygiene thing, when they're
Yeah.
touching you. I'm really so fussy and
Yeah.
I need them to have clean everything to like touch me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But then also I went through a phase even when I did my deep celibacy when I was self-pleasuring and I would again have the cleanest hands, everything would be so fine. And then I would just get thrush and I'd be like, what? Like it's me. What are you saying to me?
Yeah.
And I think, it could be linked to something emotional. I feel like for me also, I discovered that there wasn't any smells or anything, but I did have BV. That was like an underlying issue that was causing me a lot of thrush. So then when I went and got tested for that, I got treated and my candida went. And
Mm.
then I also throughout my whole like teens and 20s, when I did have thrush, I never treated it with boric acid. And then I feel like the last times that I've treated my candida, my thrush with boric acid, yeah, actually, like she's just been the happiest. So sometimes it could be like a deeper underlying issue, or it could be like diet. I know that you looked into your diet when we were traveling and you were really strict with your diet to support
You
your
mean-
system.
You mean running down to the bottom of the mountains so that I could regulate my blood sugar with sardines like immediately, even if it was drenched in melted chocolate?
Oh my God, the sardines. Oh, yes, yes. And your yummy, delicious, organic soaked walnuts went down the treat for everybody. But yeah, I feel like candida and UTIs, again, it can be a very personal thing. It could be related to your emotions. It could be the way that, for me, the way I was touching myself, the way I was self-pleasuring. It could be just as simple as me needing to disinfect all of my toys, all of my crystal dildos, and the army and the arsenal of things that I have with like apple cider vinegar. And sometimes it's really is just like around like taking more probiotics and internal probiotics, like pussy probiotics. It's just for me, I also found that when I was vegan, my candida was through the roof because my body was so alkaline and my pussy was so alkaline, but it's not actually supposed to be alkaline. Your pussy is supposed to be acidic. And the calm, if your partner, your current partner is, ejaculating in you, the semen is actually very alkaline. So that could be it as well. Maybe it could just be, I've had a session with one of my clients and there was these energetic things happening with the partner that she currently has. And actually what felt good for her is to create boundaries around him not ejaculating inside her and having boundaries around those things that have allowed her to have a much happier pussy and relationship and connection and speaking her boundaries. So for you, it could just be also your body just purging, because it could just be a purge, because I've also had sisters that have shared with me with their beautiful partners that they're with right now. At the beginning, it's like your body's kind of trying to adjust to this new person. And sometimes I know my sisters have had, UTIs at the beginning of the relationship, although this person was right for them and everything was fine, but they just needed to find their own little groove and she just needed to get used to him. So that could be the case for you.
Yeah, like when you say all that. And just to clarify, when you say thrush, what is that?
Thrush is candida. It's like thrush is when you have just like I'm guess
Overgrowth, yeast
the
infection.
overgrowth. Yeah, yeast infection. Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Okay, just making sure. And then you said BV. What's that?
That's bacterial vaginosis. It's another sort of UTI. It's like a bacterial, again, it's like a bacterial overgrowth that some women get from, like I don't know how I contracted mine, especially when I was celibate. It could have been from the past. And I didn't really have any symptoms other than this kind of like reoccurring thrush that just would just always be there. And I'd be like, what's happening? But anyway,
Yeah. A few things come up for me when you say all that. Like for me, gut stuff has always been
Oh, yes.
prevalent because of my eating disorder. And that was like so much of the beginning of my healing journey. But then I feel like the candida and the UTI has like, once I got over the really disempowered part of me that was like, I've been through all of this. Like, why am I being punished, God? Then I was able to be like, no, I'm just being brought back into like it almost feels like the resonance of sacred celibacy. It's like catering to my diet and my body and slowness in such a respectful way. Yeah, because he's definitely not ejaculating in me. I'd be like pregnant, like 4 months ago, like the first time. He's very fertile or whatever you
Yes.
say.
Oh.
And
The swimmers are strong.
they're strong. And I've never, like having been with so many avoidant men, that's been my history. And like to now be with a man who says things like, is it weird that I find it so sexy that like the woman I love would be pregnant? Like, I think that's like the sexiest thing in the world.
Oh,
And I'm like, what?
yeah.
Like, all my body image stuff like assumes that he would be less attracted to me. But no, yeah, it's been funny because our dirty banter is like trying to get me pregnant.
Yeah, like I want to have all of your babies. I
Yes.
think every man will get so turned down if, like, as they're like making love to you, you just look them straight in the eye and say, I want to have all of your babies.
Maybe that's your experience, okay? Like every man from my past before this man would like run, like I felt like I had to hold
I
that
mean, I do
desire.
I used to love avoidant men too, so
Yeah.
I definitely resonate with that. But I feel like, it is their love. I feel like, yeah, I think when in the moment, it's like a love language for a man to, it's like more of a primal thing. I
Totally.
feel like when I speak to that, it's more of like this like primal when like, because it's a big deal for a woman to actually want to have somebody's babies, especially for the caliber of women that we are. We're not just going to have anybody's babies. So I feel like when we do have that desire with somebody, that's a huge compliment.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like a claiming, right? It's like, oh, I'm allowing you in. But that is like where I'm at now. Whereas I feel like all through like my 20s and like up in kind of early 30s, it wasn't so discerning. I was like, are you gonna have my babies? Like it was like a conditioned, compulsive, like, it's like I wasn't choosing. Or I don't know if have you had that experience in your journey, or do you feel like you've always been discerning?
I feel like throughout my journey, I definitely like, of course, I've had a lot of unprotected sex in my life, and I've had a lot of various partners come inside me, and I've been always very careful to, probably not the best thing, but I've taken, even if it was just a little bit, I've always taken the morning after pill when I was younger because I just didn't want to take the chance of getting pregnant. And up until this point, I've never been pregnant. And so I feel like I've always, if I choose to have unprotected sex and something happens, I've always been the responsible one to go and just get the morning after pill afterwards. And because I just knew that I wouldn't be able to bring myself to have an abortion, but also I didn't want a child with this man potentially, or even when I did, I wasn't really ready for kids back then. Whereas obviously right now it's a different story. I'm at an age and a very beautiful era in my life where I'm so ready for kids. And that is my next evolution, is to be a mom and to be a devoted little village wife.
Right. I love it. Yeah. And I guess I was curious about the emotional part of that too, because like my experience is feeling like I was so indoctrinated with like, oh, the implicit message I got was like, I'm more worthy if I have a man or a partner, or like as a woman, I should just be like looking for a man to like wife me up that I can have kids with. So like very early on, my dating life was kind of like that. And so not
Yes.
even just like the physical, like having sex with them, but like did you have any of that for your experience?
Yeah. So in terms of my upbringing, I definitely have always felt that kind of conditioning or the expectation from more like my dad of like, when are you going to get married and when are you going to have some babies and give me grandkids? I never really felt the pressure from like my grandparents as such, or my mum, although she's loved some of my ex-boyfriends and just thinks that I'm so stupid for not like settling down with them. And like, she just thinks like, oh, we'll have the best kids and they were the best people. And I did feel the pressure to, I guess, in some ways just settle for these relationships that I did have. And because some of them were really good men and they would just take such good care of me and be such amazing dads. but I've never really felt the pressure enough to just do that. So I definitely throughout my life have felt the pressure, and I feel like the older we get, the more pressure we get, or we feel like there is this like time or this whatever we have, although it's not really my reality. I feel like I'll be able to have kids whenever. I feel extremely young, extremely healthy. My boobs are so perky. My womb is so healthy, and my pussy is so juicy that it's like I'm ready like whenever.
Yes, totally. Oh God, that was like so much for me to work through because to like decondition from that and then get to a place
Yes.
where I'm like, I'm actually happy with either outcome is like kind of
Yes.
what I really had to get to and just like divorce my worth of like being able to bear
Mm,
children and get married, like from, yeah, that was like a huge part of like the societal, yeah,
it
emphasis on my
is.
age
It's
and whether I'm able to have kids.
Yes, totally. But even these days, I feel like when I catch up with some old, like friends, when I go back home where I grew up or anything, it's like I do see how different I am and my energy is to everybody else who's married with kids, which is really beautiful. But we're also sat with the reality that maybe I do just get to be this global philanthropist and get to just like have all these businesses and like raise all this money and do like, the Oprah. I was actually born on the day that Oprah was born. So I feel like I have also sat with the reality that maybe I don't get to be a mom this lifetime or get to be this wife, and I get to actually have this lifetime as my lifetime that's off, like being that woman that's just like entirely devoted to the man and is a mother and is just bringing up kids and is sacrifices everything. So it's definitely an interesting journey to take to just see how you actually feel and are you able to find your worth and still your center in being that woman that's maybe in her 30s that still hasn't been married, that hasn't got kids. Like, how does that make you feel? And yeah, how much worth do you actually tie to that?
Totally. And it's like I got to divorcing my worth from that. And I'm sure you have as well. And I'm curious, even as you say that other side, because it's like same. I was like, I'll be the cool aunt. Yeah, even though I don't have siblings. So I don't know how I'll be an aunt. Go visit my cousin's children.
Well, it's
And I'll bring
yes,
I'll bring the
yeah,
presents from
the
my
godmother.
travel, the godmother, and I'll play with them
Mm.
until I'm tired of it, and then you know, and I'll always keep my body, and I love entertaining that side of it. And I'm curious if like there's any part of you, even as much as you're okay with that side, feels like a pang or like a knowing of what's truer for you.
Yes, absolutely. I have held a vision and this deep longing and desire in my heart that I know I'm so nurturing and I'm very motherly, and I know that I would love to be a mother, and I do feel like becoming a mother and a like devoted partner and having a beloved this lifetime feels more in my destiny and in my like deeper heart desire. Then, and I feel like it's also an evolution of me. It's evolution of me as a woman. I've already done so much in my life with being like single and independent and really focused on my mission and my vision, and to travel to 37 or 38 countries. And I've done so much in my life. And I feel like the next evolution in my life is to actually become a mother and to be like a beautiful, devoted partner. So, as much as I love the idea of maintaining my independence and selfishness, but I feel like the only way that I can override like being as self-centered as I can be sometimes, and also being as independent I am and everything else, is to actually enter a deeper relationship with someone and to have kids. And to I just know that relationship is such a path this lifetime for me. I'm really here to master relationships of all kinds, and this is where the true work is done, as you know, is within deep love and deep containers, that where the willingness and the commitment and the devotion to each other and a bigger picture is there. So I definitely resonate more with, I would love to become a mother and yeah, like to be in a beautiful union this lifetime than to just be like an Oprah, kind of have lots of money and lots of orphaned kids and travel the world. But I feel like there is a deeper part of me that wants to be fulfilled through, yeah, just the type of parent that I'll be and the type of mother that I'll be and the way that I like to, yeah, even when I pray and I do a lot of ancestral work, I really feel that I do get to carry this ancestry on with my daughter and my granddaughter. And I do envision myself being really old and grey and just like this wise, like grey witch grandmother that's like so spiritual and all the little kids come to. And I'm just like a cool, wise, grounded, a very interesting grandmother.
Yeah. I think like there was so much of me that really wanted to embrace the like independent traveling woman. And it's funny because now that I'm in this partnership with somebody who actually wants all that with me,
Mm.
it's brought up how much I've dated avoidant men and have avoided this because it's fucking terrifying actually to my body. And
Yes.
what I realized was it has brought up a lot a lot of my subconscious beliefs that I will be like how I was parented. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been through a lot of pain. My parents are immigrants and they do not have the kind of emotional vocabulary. They were like in pure survival, have endured a
Mm-hmm.
lot of trauma, and a lot of that got passed down onto me, which is why I'm so passionate about this work. But I didn't realize like until actually I was on the plane back from France. And of course, and I never get to sit next to like I'm always like, why don't I get to sit next to a hot guy? Or like, why don't I get to sit next to like someone really interesting that I want to talk to?
Yeah.
And this this woman
Mm.
had like the same journal, like the magic of eye journals, like the super moon
Yes.
witchy journals. She had that, and also she was reading The Untethered Soul. And like before I sat down,
Mm.
she was like, "Oh my God, you look so cute." And so I like knew there was like a vibe. I was like, "Okay, cool." Like, and we ended up
Yes, she's your
talking.
human.
Yes. And I just felt like it was like such divine, like, I'm going to plop this here for you, because as I've been in this partnership, I've been so avoidant, which is so unlike me because I'm like terrified of like, how can I commit? How can I know, even though I've said like when you talk about motherhood and that yearning, I feel it's like this wistful, like almost like just like a single teardrop kind of feeling, like,
Mm.
and like the delicateness of like dewy rose petals, like this knowing of like what kind of
Mm.
mother that I will be, and like I get emotional
Mhm.
talking about it. And it's like been such this contrast of me knowing that and even leaving my past 6-year relationship because it didn't have that in the cards for us to then being faced with like how will I know that I can do that? Like how can I know like that I can commit forever, and how can I know that I have the capacity to nurture these humans without being a total bitch, because I love my alone time. I like need
Mhm.
silence.
Same.
I need, like God, and I'm like, fuck, how will I do that? And so this woman, she's like 55. She has her own company. She connects wellness practitioners to corporate companies. And she's like newly out of a divorce, but she is just telling me like about the life that she and her ex had raising their 3 kids. She doesn't regret anything, and she's like, it was a very amicable divorce. And now she's dating and she's like so hot. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know. There was something that like
Wow.
popped for me. And especially, and you said something like this in the card too, because I think another expectation subconsciously I've been holding is like, I need to know that this person is going to be my forever, like forever and ever, and then some
Mhm.
subconscious programming of like, divorce or splitting up is like looked down upon, like
Mm-hmm.
that I've failed in some way. And I remember when you said in the car, you were like, oh, yeah, it doesn't have to be forever, but like somebody that I know that I could do this next chapter with. And then
Yes.
also meeting her, like so much of it was released from me. Not that I don't want, like, of course I like dream of that, but it's like my mind being like, I need to know and make this decision based on knowing. And it's like,
Mm.
we're ever evolving. How can we say that?
Yes, that's it. And I think that's such a kind of like an evolved and more non-conventional way of also just like releasing the expectation that this person needs to be like your forever person. Because I think when you zoom out, the soul children that we have, like as spirit babies, they choose their mother and their father. And sometimes I feel like as long as you have like a there is love and you can create a baby with love through love and you both have really beautiful qualities, like you both want to be parents. I think that's like needs to be a non-negotiable. Both the man really truly wants to be a father because you know that he will prioritize this baby over everything, and same for you. I feel like sometimes it's just beautiful for us. And I also know a lot of people who have kids as women and they never were maternal, but then as soon as they had the baby, they just was like, oh, this is the best thing ever. But yeah, when you have a kid with someone, I feel like as long as they're a nice person and will be an amazing dad and will take care of you, and you know that they're not going to be too bad of a person to sort of maybe co-parent with, I think it is very important who we do choose to have children with and the type of characters that they are, and you know, who will they be if yeah you were to choose to co-parent, how would they be in that. And I think that's more important in today's society that we live in, which nothing is forever these days. And I mean, it's just like, yeah, you just relieve yourself from knowing that you can have, maybe for me, I see it like that. I get to have like this beautiful chapter. This, my next big chapter will be with this one man. But maybe, yes, when I'm in my 60s and my interests have changed and I'm just this new woman, then I just get to have a beautiful lover when I'm in my 60s, when my kids have grown up. And it's like, you know, we get to have a lot of soulmates this lifetime. I do believe that we have many, over 100 soulmates, and they could be friends, they could be men, they could be lovers, they could be all sorts of things, you know. So I feel like, and I feel like even your dog was your soulmate, you know. I feel like we just don't need to cling on so tightly to that one person that just gets to be everything for us for the rest of our lives and never leave us. I feel like
Right.
that's very clingy and limiting, and there's a lot of suffering in that.
Right. Well, me and my partner were talking about this because I've been since my 6 year relationship, trying to figure out what does commitment mean. Because I do like the
Mm-hmm.
idea of ceremony and promises
Yes.
and the
Grown all
sacred.
together.
Yeah, and I have been manifesting sacred divine union. So that is
Yes.
something I deeply desire. And so figuring out like what is the language around that that's not so constricting, as like maybe the church or politics or whatever, paperwork makes it out to be. It's like, but yeah, I've been in this like inquiry of like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And what about this is sacred? And I think where me and my current partner got to is like realizing, yeah, like, maybe in a little bit of more the boomer generation or like when marriage was like, I promise forever, like till death do us part,
Yes.
and then the first sign of conflict, they're like, you don't love me, da da da. Da. That actually like that binding contract is like that version of it is like not actually leaving room for God or spirit. But
Yes.
then on the other part, like there can be this divine commitment, divine union with room for God and spirit. And then for us, we're like, oh, and that means that like I care to love you so deeply that like I want you to just always be the best version of yourself. And of course,
Mm.
we commit like the nonviolent communication, we commit to the hard conversations because we want to be in service of each other. But that
Yes.
like if some time like it really feels like they're growing apart from me, like that I will actually love them enough to let them embody their authentic expression in that phase of their life. It doesn't mean it won't
Mm.
be messy. It doesn't mean I won't turn into a fucking gremlin. But so that I guess is
Where
it's
you
like
got
it's just
to.
so
Wow,
interesting.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we
Yeah.
do get to redefine our own rules when it comes to these things as this generation. I really feel like people like us, we are creating this new generation of people and the way the kind of world that we live in, the way that we want to do our businesses, the way that we want to do our relationships. So for me, I definitely resonate with some of the values, and some of the morals are very ancient and very old school and very like Mary Magdalene and Yeshua type of devotion, and this like deep, sacred, yummy, true, ancient love. Yet yes, I feel like there is also, it is a little bit more unconditional, and there is this like room for you to both to grow and evolve, and it's like you just keep choosing each other and you are each other's person until one day you wake up and you no longer choose each other.
Well, and even it's so interesting that you bring up Mary Magdalene. Like for those of you don't, I've been on my whole like spiritual, like religious indoctrination, like deconditioning from that.
Yes.
And so like what we're speaking to is actually like the story of Mary Magdalene and Jesus being sacred divine lovers and her being actually initiating his human body to be ready to move through his soul mission on earth into the afterlife through the death portal. And so, even as you're saying, even though they're like this ancient archetype of divine lovers, how interesting is it to think that Mary Magdalene from the beginning loved him with detachment because she knew that his sacred mission was to leave her on this earth, and that
Yes.
she, like, in such divine devotion, would like, still be in it, knowing that his higher purpose was to be away from her.
Mm. Oh, and that is such deep love that is not codependent. That is like, it's
Yeah.
exalted love. And I feel like for me, what I see as my sacred marriage being, it's more of like a beautiful ceremony that is, more like with nature, and like it's not in a church with like all these things that they are like very binding contracts. And of course, like you just don't know what will happen when the day comes, and if that's, whenever that arises. But I feel like there is so many ways that we get to choose what our love and what these divine unions this lifetime, because we are recreating them. We are the women, we're the priestesses, we're the goddesses that are really leading this way. Like we are standing in a power, in a sovereignty, in a truth, in an oracle nature, and saying to these men that this is also what it gets to be, and we get to co-create this together, and they get to share their desires and how they see it. And if your fundamental like non-negotiables are the same, then you just, like I say, there needs to be this willingness and this sense of commitment and leaning in and not running away, and but also just this willingness and this like, yeah, just love and true desire to just keep choosing each other.
It's that's been a theme lately on like my spiritual journey, is like seeing how sometimes I feel like I go swing the other way. Like I was very promiscuous as a trauma response from losing my virginity and all of this stuff. And then to protect myself, I like gave my body over and over again without knowing, like, so that I could be safe. And then once I was in my first, like, really solid, safe relationship of 6 years, that's when my sexuality, like, completely went offline. And a year before I met him, that's when my body was like, no, like, it's time to be celibate. And then I did
Yeah.
find him in a relationship, But then now I'm back, I've like been reclaiming my sacred slut archetype and kind of like reclaiming that energy within me. And me and my
Mm-hmm.
partner were talking about how interesting it is that like the spiritual journey, it's like you go on this odyssey and you kind of come back to a place that looks the same, but it's totally different. Like how we're talking about
Yes.
marriage, like I went on my odyssey of am I poly, all those things, like trying to disown that sacred union and then getting back to where I started from, but from a totally different energy, like one of devotion rather than sacrifice and like crippling cage being caged.
Yes,
Um,
codependency and like,
exactly,
yes.
exactly. Choosing instead
Mm.
of like entrapment. And or like
Mm-hmm.
how sex looks now, where like at one point I was like no, like it's evil, because I was like violated in so many ways, and I was very like no porn, like no, that was what anyway, that was like my self process of putting myself in on sunroom and like actually doing nudes and stuff because I was moving through that. I had so much
Mm.
anger towards porn and overt like representations of sex because my ego was trying to make it about
Yes.
like it's because of that I was raped, or violated or whatever. And
Mm.
then now it's
Yeah.
like me and my partner were like, "Oh, like what happened in my goddess bathroom like that like that could have looked the same as the porno."
Yeah. Yeah,
But
that could have
like
been a
from
home
like
movie.
exactly. But it didn't, it wasn't like empty. It was so full, so rich, so like full of like worship and devotion. Like for me to say, like, can I worship
Mm.
you and get on my knees? Like that totally different vibe than when I was in my 20s, like
Oh,
doing it out of like, I should do this. Like it actually felt like, oh, you're such a good man. I just want to make you feel good. And I like, give you this love from my heart. And so that's an interesting thing about how things can look. It's like same, same, but different is like the
yeah.
vibe.
Yeah, I love that share and what I'm hearing and all of that. It does come down to our own perceptions, but then also it's like it just seems that you've actually like fully taken your power back and all these choices that you're making now to like worship at the altar of his cock. It's like it's your empowered choice. You're not doing it
Right.
because that's what you're meant to be do or whatever that may be. So it's like you're more in your power now. You're making these empowered choices out of your own desire to do those things. And it's not, yeah, there is less distortion in the kind of, we get so influenced when we're young and then it's like as we journey on a journey, we get to find what is our truth and what does feel good for us. And also we just let go of a lot of the distortion that we may hold and we come back to just things that feel like, oh, yeah, no, actually, that's my truth. Like, I do want sacred union. I want it to be monogamous, and I don't want to share this man with anybody else. And it's just coming from a much more empowered, like, you know what your truth is now space.
Totally. And, marrying the parts in me that I didn't know were fractured from, my traumatic experiences having to do with sex, where like the
Yes.
lover archetype in me, like the devoted, wants forever, wants one person forever, and the whore, like the part of me that is like really sexy and
Mm-hmm.
like has like a really fucking high sex drive. That's the first thing my Vedic astrologer said to me when he pulled my chart like 4 years ago. He was like, this is like one of the most sexual charts. And it's also one of the most spiritual. And he's like, you're like a resurrected yogi
Wow.
slash nun, but you live, he's
Oh.
like, you live with this unnerving complex between your slut and your nun. And that is something that
Oof.
you're going to be figuring out for a lot of your life.
Oh, yum. I love it.
Yeah,
I
it's
so
so true.
resonate. Yeah, I so resonate. And
Yes.
even I feel like there is like for a lot of my life, I feel there's always knowingly or unknowingly, I've always been in this archetype that is like I so yeah, like do want committed relationships, and I have had a few of those, but I feel like the older I get, the more I'm just more in this like femme fatale type of dynamic where a lot of men desire me and they love the look of me and want to journey with me to an extent. But then it's like something, it's like I'm a lot, like I'm a full spectrum woman. And yeah, there is like a lot of men are just, and women, you know, for the transmission that I am, it's just like, whoa, like there's a lot to be with. And so yeah, like I love how sometimes even on Sunroom, you know, some of my followers say like, wow, like I love like how innocent you are, but then you're also just like so you love like a little bit of bondage and shibari, and like I am such a sexy minx. And then, but then at the same time, I'm so innocent and like can be just this like village girl that's like loves the wholesome, simple life. And like I am all of it. That's what I mean. It's like we have the light aspects of us, the archetypes, that's like the maiden, and the innocence of us, our sexual innocence, our erotic innocence. It's very much a part of all of us. And then we're also, yeah, when we go into dark femme and the dark masculine, it's like I can literally like fuck someone with a strap on, you know, and I also can be like the most seductive, oozy, yummy, like most tempting thing out there. So it's like we do get to be both, all of it. And what a lucky man for whoever gets to have us. And at the moment, obviously, you have someone, and it's like, how lucky are these men? Because obviously, we relate with men, but how lucky are them to have all of these flavors in one woman who like gets to be the nun, and then gets to be the whore, and then gets to be the slut, and then gets to be the like the little housewife. And I think it also just so deeply stems from this like whole Madonna complex. It's like the society has really been like, you either get to be the whore or you get to be the Madonna, or like you get to be like, and it's like, no, but we get to be both. And for the initiated men who understand that, can see that it's like a true integrated woman gets to be all of it, that gets to be the mother, she gets to be the maiden, she gets to be the whore, she gets to be the queen and high priestess, that will literally initiate the fuck out of you in all the ways. And it's whether you're just ready for that or not.
Totally. Like when I was going through my like, okay, let's date somebody, you know, who practices ethical non-monogamy. And of course, like I caught feelings and it was mutual. But at a certain point, I was like, how can you date other women when there's like 26 women inside of me? Like, I don't get it. And, you know, so I was just like, this isn't for me. And I really had to own that for myself. And it's this paradox of like, I want to be this, I want to be 26 women for one man. Like one divine
Yes.
lover gets to have my sacred slut, you know? Whereas like for some
Yes.
time, because like you were mentioning how society separates the whore from the Madonna, that I thought like either I needed to be free and you know, like ethical non-monogamy or poly, or monogamous and boring or something like that. But like, no.
Totally, yes, like palatable, like good girl that just looks good and all the things. And oh, and it's like the wild woman and the primal part of you that is just like, yeah. And I think that's why I also know so many men in so many marriages that are so stale, because I feel like they just get like one flavor and these women don't maybe feel safe or whatever that the dynamic might be. But you know, there is so many like sexless marriages because the polarity isn't there. Like they don't get to like play in these archetypes that are so yummy and that just have so much like life force that can be freed up through it, as we know, when we even go into our rage and into these like deeper parts of ourselves. Like how hot and how life transforming would some of these marriages become if like the woman just gets to like they just get into their primal and get to like be animals with each other and howl and hiss and like bite and scratch each other. Like that's hot, you know, that would bring so much
Yeah.
aliveness to marriages. I just feel like, yeah, there is so much to be said that also for women that are embodied, that in their like sexuality, they're in their bodies, they love themselves, they know who they are. It's like these are the flavors that we are spicy and we have so much to give. And yeah, like I think we also make it a priority to, in our relationships, to create like weekly dates or like temple nights, and we get to go in there and, you know, speak our needs and have like the emotional connection that we need in all of our relationships to stay connected, to stay our hearts connected, to stay our pussies connected, to have yummy, delicious, nourishing sex. And I think a lot of people don't make that a priority. They're too tired for it or whatever. And it's like it needs to be a thing that gets to be scheduled in if you're so busy.
Yeah, and it goes back to like that expectation or that indoctrination of like, I'm making this promise on my wedding day. And then it feels like a lot
Hmm.
of people stop trying because they think they don't have to choose anymore. When in reality, to
Yes.
me, it's a promise to choose every day. And so, like, my new thing is like the amygdala is the new clit. And so, like, all my world is
I
like
love that.
nonviolent communication. How do we resolve conflict? Like, you watched me and Kate, like me, Kate, and
Yes, it was
Marsha.
so amazing.
Right. But like the love and connection and intimacy me and Kate have after those conversations with my current partner when we've and he's a therapist, so it's great. I've like found somebody to spar with, who's like on my level.
Yes.
So, like, even very early on, before we've been long distance, before we even met in person, we would have these conversations of like almost like working through conflict or whatever. And then I'd be like, I just feel
Mm,
like such intense erotic energy. Like, I've never felt this before. And he was like, that's so crazy that you say that because I just realizing how turned on I am right now. And I'm like, oh my God, the amygdala is the new clit is like also like
mm,
emotional connection. Like, how do we,
absolutely.
nurture this daily? So there's,
Yes. And vulnerability and like revealing our hearts and really just staying in connection through allowing ourselves to have this like more of a healthy conflict resolution that you know how to do, and you know how to guide the conversation into a deeper sense of connection that will always open up a deeper like layers of intimacy where you do just want to like make out, but not make up sex, but it's like, oh, like we just broken through something and we leaned into deeper layers of connection, so of course I want to like connect with you and be close to
yeah,
you.
right.
That's
Yeah.
so
Like,
beautiful.
first,
Yes.
it's like the first experience of feeling like, oh, you're fucking my heart. Like, not just my
Yes. Yes. We love that. We love
yeah.
that. We love being fucked in our hearts and in our minds and in our, like, not a mind fuck, but yeah, like we need the emotional connection. I actually did one of my little charts that you do. You know, you got like love languages and then you got your sex blueprint. And then I did another one which
Mhm.
actually came up as like this emotional connection and intelligence is like highly important to me, as well as
Mhm.
like growth and support. Just like feeling supported in my relationship and knowing that there is like deeper layers of growth that we can go to and we're both willing to go and grow and deepen. It's like highly, 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 highly important to me.
Yeah, totally. And I'm curious, I was going to ask you this question like maybe an hour ago, but here we are. Like
An hour later.
yeah, like when typical, when your womb was like, no, we need a break, and you embarked on your celibacy journey, what did you learn from that? Like, what of all, we've been talking about all of this, like sexuality and everything. Like, did that wisdom come from the time that you were celibate, or can you help me understand like what were the gems from this
I
time?
guess a lot of Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I spoke to has definitely comes from a very wide experience that I've had in my life. I could definitely write a book, and many people tell me that I should. But within the celibacy journey, I think this journey is really this deepening into self, into understanding what your needs are, what your desires are. I really got to do a lot of healing, like womb healing, cervical healing. I was able to rediscover like me being a squirter, and I was able to like make myself squirt. I was able to deepen my own safety within my own being, that I was able to like hold more safety in my being. So therefore, I became even more like I became actually kinky within my celibacy, although I wasn't sharing my sexual energy with anyone. Although it's like there was like all these other, I just became even more sexually opened through my own celibacy because I was meeting my own needs and I wasn't outsourcing. And I do find a lot of women that come to work with me, a lot of them, yeah, like they give themselves because they need validation, or they just like keep falling in the arms of men that don't fully, yeah, just like have this reverence for them. And I speak for myself from before. I feel like there was, even just within my relationships, I could feel that I have such deeper reverence for sacred sexuality than what they did. And then it's easier for them to maybe go and like cheat, or not really so much cheat, but they, it's just like they just didn't have the same understanding about sexuality or sacred sexuality, or the way that I consider sex the way that they do. So you just get to discover, and I got to discover so much. I mean, 2 years of really deeply journeying with myself has been able to heal and access such deep layers of my own being and my own desire, my own needs, how I meet my own needs. Just like I said, the sexual exploration that I went on. And I think ultimately it's a very interesting and a strong indication of how you feel when you're just in your own energy, when you're not sharing your energy with anyone else, the amount of clarity that you have, how connected you feel to not only yourself, but to God and the goddess, how clean everything just seems, like so much more in flow, because you're just cultivating this energy that we all have, and you're not just like giving it away to people that maybe don't even deserve it.
Right. And so you said you were celibate for 2 years.
Yeah, it was 2 years and 3 months. And then within that, I would do yearly meditations with Vipassana, which is 10 days of silent meditation. And towards the end of that celibacy, I did another Vipassana and I sat in meditation for 2 hours. And it just like fully came through because my channel was so clear. I just got the download to like, this is your medicine this lifetime. As I feel like, I am this like sex priestess. I definitely feel like I resonate with Isis, like sort of like just the temple arts. And although I'm not into Tantra, like I've never done any tantric-y things, it's like I found like I'm naturally very tantric.
Yeah.
So I do feel that, I do speak within my sacred celibacy course about the high priestesses that used to practice celibacy and how they cultivated and used their energy towards a lot of huge, big things. And I think that, yeah, like there was this a very clear message that throughout my celibacy, and I've had a lot of celibate streaks in my entire life. Like I'm somebody that will connect with someone or get a partner and be like so as you, like I have a huge sex drive when I'm actually in a relationship, but when I'm not, I'm able to cultivate that energy and funnel it into my business, into my offerings, into all these other things, and into friends and my art and so much more. So I'm not actually very like sex driven as such. Like I don't need sex all the time, especially when I'm not with anyone, and I don't enjoy casual sex. So for me, that's never really fulfills me. So I'd rather just do a self-pleasure practice and cultivate my energy than go and sleep with a random guy of Tinder and just have a one-night stand. That's just not something that's ever been fulfilling for me. So yeah, within this sacred celibacy journey, I really teach women. It's a very holistic way of looking at devoting to yourself for 40 days and 40 nights. I take them through all these different practices and meditations and deep shamanic journeys into clearing past lovers, their wombs, activating their wombs, exploring orgasm and pleasure. There is just like so much in this, delicious course. And I just wanted to be really accessible for people to, even if they are in a marriage, like I said, there is a lot of sexless marriages that even within the marriage, if you just take those 40 days just for yourself to devote those 40 days to yourself, I feel like, yeah, you might be able to even like resurrect your marriage.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that sounds like such medicine that everybody needs. And even I found, like, I realized, like, doing all of that practice on my own before manifesting, it's like a manifestation practice of like cultivating that energy on my own because my experience was so different because I gave myself up because it was an attachment thing. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, I need connection or love. And it was confused as that for me. And so it actually took like a long time for me to get to the place where I'm like, this, it would be fulfilling, but like empty afterwards to have sex with somebody that wasn't like everything that was like a full yes in my body. But
Yes.
I wasn't full enough in myself. Like I was still in that habit of outsourcing. But it's interesting that, like, then having been doing those, having done those practices myself and then manifesting even someone where there is that divine connection and there is that sacredness in sex, it's like still important to like have your own self-pleasure practice. Like,
Absolutely.
I notice when I'm like, oh, now I found somebody and it's gonna all be here, like the magnetism, right? Like it's weird. It's like we have to cultivate that always ourselves.
Yeah, because there is still, it's like now that you're in a relationship, it's like you just expect for this other person to meet all of those sexual needs. But it's like if you have your own self-pleasure practice, then you can still cultivate this relationship with yourself and your yoni and your womb and your cervix and deepen. And I think that you actually get to have much better sex when you have a self-pleasure practice as a spiritual practice because you meet yourself at the altar in that way. It doesn't have to be this like whole, like you just, flick the clit. There's nothing wrong with that, but still it's like, it's more of this, like you meet yourself at the altar with yourself. And if there is something that's like stuck in the womb or if there's something, then again, you get to meet yourself in that. And then, because I think a lot of people, also they just like have sex at the end of the day just to like kind of like emptying out the garbage bin or something. It's like they just have a little thing and then they're just like there, like all my stress and all my stuff is just like
Right.
onto you, and then you just roll over and go to bed. And it's like, no, that's not like in my world, that's not what sex is about. And of course, like you get to have that every now and then, but it's no, like my vessel and my body is definitely not for somebody to empty their day at the end of the day, get to just like empty out onto me and then just roll over and go to sleep. Like that's just, no, I would rather have like one temple night a week where it's like candles and all the things and deep connection and deep like hours long love making. I'd rather have like that once a week than just like empty yourself and your stress and your hard day at work on me, and then it's just that you just get to roll over. I don't think so.
Right.
There's like there's different textures and there's different flavors to sex, and there's nothing wrong with any of it. It's just whatever you're committed to and what you're available for.
Well, I'm curious if there's anything else that you'd want to share about the course that you're working on right now, which I'm really excited for. Yeah, like if I know that you're still working on it. Do you have an idea of when it'll be ready or?
Oh, it's definitely like I've been recording the videos throughout the time that I've been had the download, and I know that at the moment this medicine is really needed. Like so many people are going through breakups and really, like I say, like stale, like self, like just like yeah, there is marriages that are suffering. So I really just want this to be a beautiful offering to all women who
can commit themselves to meeting themselves at the altar, which I'll teach people how to do, and just really allow to put yourself first more than maybe ever in your life, where you've never really met yourself so deeply. And so I will be launching it very soon. Maybe even when this podcast is launched, there is already going to be a link which you can go to at Sacred Celibacy and register your interest. And I'm just at the moment, I'm deciding whether I want to run it as a live course for 40 days and 40 nights. I just have to find a time in my own diary to run it as a live course, or if I just want to create it as an evergreen online self-paced course. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm stuck at the moment. But a lot of the content is already there. It just needs to come out there. So hopefully by the time this podcast is launched, it will be available for people to purchase and to be part of and to treat themselves to this beautiful devotional journey.
Yay. Oh, I'm so excited, and I'm so grateful that we got to have this conversation today. And yeah, just it's so
Oh, me
beautiful
too.
how like intertwined and inspired our paths have been. And I'm so grateful to have discovered a soul sister in you.
Likewise, so grateful for our connection and just for both of us being expanders for each other and just to have these beautiful, deep, dynamic chats that matter and are inspiring. And we just hope that a lot of these, our own experiences and our own paths it gets to touch, move, and inspire others who need to
Yeah,
hear this right now.
definitely. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining. And also, maybe we'll just like show that divine masculine and feminine behind you.
The divine masculine and the divine feminine.
So beautiful.
Beautiful piece of art.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I
Thank you,
love
thank you,
you.
thank you.
I
So
will
much
see
love to
you
you.
so soon. Mwah.
Mwah.